The Innovators Network.
Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to this week's Killer Innovation Show. This week's topic is about innovating employment, more specifically, hiring and employing individuals that are from a neurodiverse background. You've heard me talk many times on this show around neurodiversity. Diversity in hiring for innovation is absolutely critically important. Diversity not just confined to the typical HR definitions, but including people with variety of experiences. Did they come from money or not for money? Did they grow up in the U.S.? Were they military kids, or did they immigrate to to your location? We're going to take a look at neurodiversity, thinking styles, hiring people that are neurodiverse. The rest of us are what we would refer to as neurotypicals. This is around neurodiversity hiring. We have a special guest on today's show, Tom Dieri. I've known Tom, 7, 8, 9 years now. Tom and his dad started a business in Florida called Rising Tide Car Wash. Now you're going to think, okay, innovating with car washes. How exciting is this? Trust me, you want to listen to this show. So we get caught up on everything going on with what they're doing in their neurodiverse hiring programs. I share some of the work that we're doing, where I'm the CEO at Neurodiverse Hiring. And then Tom makes an announcement towards the end of the show. Tom has a book coming out called The Power of Potential. You want to hear about this book? This should be on everybody's bookshelf. You want to read this book. If you tap into this community of hiring and innovate the way you recruit and hire people that think differently, the impact that it can have on your team's creativity and your team's innovation output can be second to none. So that's what the topic for today's show is. But before we hop into this week's episode, got that favor to ask: follow, like, and share. Follow us on social media. Like us, give us a thumbs up, give us a rating wherever you get your podcast, and share. If you think there's somebody that you know that could benefit from hearing today's show, send them the link. Share this show with them. Let them get the benefit of hearing what Tom Dieri has to share around innovating hiring. And without further ado, let's hop in to this week's episode.
This episode is sponsored by Zoom. With Zoom, you can streamline your communication, collaboration, and creativity all in one place. Zoom is the market-leading platform that provides video meetings, voice, webinars, and chat across desktops, phones, tablets, and conference room systems. To learn more about Zoom and sign up for your free account, visit killerinnovations.com/Zoom.
So, Tom, it's been a while since you and I have had a chance to get caught up. You were up here in Colorado, I don't know how many years ago it was, when we did the Hacking Autism Hackathon and came up and shared your story. You and I actually met through some mentoring programs that were going on in Boulder. So we've known each other, I'm afraid to say how many years now. But what have you been up to lately? What's going on?
Yeah, I think we've known each other now for about 7 years.
Whoa.
You've always been so instrumental in giving us such good insights when we've talked. So I'm pumped to be on the show with you today. For context, my family started Rising Tide Car Wash in 2013 as a means to employ my brother Andrew, who's on the autism spectrum. And at the time, we bought a struggling car wash in Parkland, Florida, renovated it, and started to implement our system of employing people with autism for about 80% of the staff. And it was, lots of twists and turns along the way, but I'm happy to report now the business has become quite successful. That location that we purchased, it was washing about 35,000 cars a year when we bought it, and now it's washing over 170,000 cars a year we've been able to leverage that success into 2 more locations, which are both just as successful as the first one. And along the way, we've had a lot of people kind of reach out and be like, well, we'd love to be able to do something like you're doing, whether it be in our business or it's a family member that has a child with autism and wants to kind of emulate our path. So I'm trying to figure out how do we support the broader community and the broader movement to close the unemployment gap among people with autism, which is still somewhere between 60 and 80%. And
in the state of Colorado, it's 81%. If you have an autism diagnosis,
wow.
In the state of Colorado, it's an 81% unemployment rate, which I just find absolutely, mind blowing. When you take out, what's the number now? 1 out of every 43 or whatever kids will be diagnosed on the spectrum. And then you say 81%. Think about that from a workforce impact perspective, taking that percentage of the workforce out of the equation, particularly given the aging of the population. You got the boomers, it's the big, we're going to have a declining birth rate. We're seeing a declining population, but with such a high unemployment rate of a workforce that has a huge economic impact, not just to mention support services that we spend in support of people with autism.
Totally. And I mean, it's even more striking when you consider that only about 16% of the autism spectrum has a significant intellectual disability. So you're looking at most 16, of the autism
now hold on. Because it's like all disabilities. People tend to try to generalize it based on external appearances. Sure. And they make huge assumptions on someone's ability or inability based on whatever they're exhibiting. So you're saying it's only 16? Is it 16%?
Yeah, only 16% significant intellectual disability. Most of what you've seen in the explosion of diagnoses are folks that don't have significant or any intellectual disabilities. And from our perspective, the reason why you're seeing such high unemployment among people with autism is because they communicate on a social level differently than a neurotypical person, right? They respond to different social cues where I wouldn't say it's necessarily really any worse, but it's certainly very different where in an interview that plays out, I think particularly disadvantageously for talent with autism, right? Because while they may not value direct eye contact, may not give you the super firm handshake, may not wow you with the charisma, may not be as interested in lying to you about what their skill sets are, and all those things, I think are really the traditional hiring system and traditional way that we assess talent becomes a really big barrier for a lot of really capable, very talented people with autism. So that was one of the first things that we tried to work on, which was developing actually a clear and consistent hiring process that could accurately determine how capable people with autism are to do the roles that we're hiring for without it being very subjective like a normal interview is.
Well, and that's interesting. You and I have had this conversation in the past, and where I'm the CEO at, we've had, I would call it a couple of rounds of neurodiverse hiring efforts.
Yeah.
Many cases, we will be brought candidates from the state of Colorado or family members who find us or whatever because of their somebody in their family who's very, very skilled. But we had one that was 61 interviews, could not get a job offer. Not get a job offer. Yet this kid graduated number 2 computer science from Carnegie Mellon.
Wow.
Number 2 computer science, Carnegie Mellon. 61 interviews, couldn't get a job. So the state of Colorado asked us, would I interview him? Could I get some other people to interview them? And could we give the kid some help, some feedback? We interviewed the kid. We hired the kid. Forget that. If everybody else is going to pass this kid up. But it does require a different hiring process because the hiring hurdle is huge. but also the rethinking how you manage people. And I know you've been at the forefront of this about how do you put together a program that allows for management structures in such a way that these individuals, one, are successful, but two, not just successful in their own, but also good for the business.
Right. Yeah. So, it was a really interesting design challenge for us as we kind of put that goal of 80% people with autism, right away, right? Because that made it where we really had to design everything that we do as a business to effectively be able to support neurodivergent team members, because you certainly can't marginalize 80% of your business, 80% of your workforce. So, well, I think what we learned was that those things were really good for everybody, right? They're not necessarily anything, you don't necessarily have to do anything different to effectively support neurodivergent team members, but you have to, I think, be a little bit better. Yep. In that. And what I mean by that is that everybody requires things like clear feedback, managers who care, managers who create safe and trusting work environments, structure and routine, role clarity. These are things that everybody thrives on, but I think neurotypical people are able to navigate them a little bit, bad situations or less than optimal situations a little bit better than neurodivergent team members are. But that allows us, as we try to build things for neurodivergent team members, to really create, I think, good processes that are just better by designing around the needs of those team members.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things we did in our hiring, look, we're software engineers, hardware engineers, et cetera, is around, we found by assigning a mentor, somebody who could understand and have those kinds of very clear communications, very clear expectations. And then what we found is once we placed people on those teams and they had a strong internal mentor, that the team then learned, and the team actually became much better at just executing amongst themselves because they had more clarity in communicating amongst themselves. They didn't leave things ambiguous at the end of the meeting. There was clear summarization of tasks and assignments and who was responsible for what. So it actually raised the bar on the management, leadership, and team communications by having somebody that's neurodiverse on the team.
Yeah. We like to think about it as like people with autism are extreme users of organizational systems, right? They have the same needs as everyone else. They're just more apparent. So by designing around them, it makes it better for everyone. And like what you just said, I think anyone who's really tried to employ neurodivergent people in a systematic way, it finds those same benefits. It's like, wow, it just made it better for the whole team. My managers gained better management and leadership skills by doing this. We built better processes by doing it. And wow, we got great talent that otherwise may have been overlooked because we did this.
Well, you've heard me get in my little soapbox on this one, right? Because, I'm hiring for innovators, people who are creative, right? And you need people who look at things differently. And what you find is those on the who are neurodiverse look at everything differently. And if you just close your mouth and listen to them, they will reveal things that you just overlook, you don't think about. And that can be a real catalyst. And I would argue every leader, particularly if you want to drive an innovation strategy, looking at neurodiversity as a way of adding diversity to your team. If you have everybody that looks the same education, same background, same experiences, but we all think the same, you're not diverse. Thinking styles also has a huge impact.
Yeah, I think arguably that, having the diversity of thought on your team is probably one of the most impactful ways that diversity can really impact an organization.
So in your case, you and your dad started Rising Tide for your brother. And now, how many locations do you have now?
3.
So you're
We've
up
got
to
3
3.
locations in South Florida. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you educated me because I think a lot of people think, "Oh, it's a car wash, right?" Do you know? Tom had to educate me on what the capital requirement is for every location. You don't realize how much capital is required to just build and open a car wash. It is
Yep.
mind-boggling how much cash is required.
Yeah, I mean, each location on average costs about $5 million to get them from, to bring the whole project together. I mean, typically you need a really nice piece of property in a main retail place. So you're competing with organizations like McDonald's or banks, right, that are also compete that want these types of properties too. And then you've got close to $1 million or about $1 million of actual equipment, because really the car wash is just a big robot, not a particularly intelligent robot, but nevertheless has, it's a lot of different automated systems working together to make that product at the end really good. And then you've got to build a beautiful building so people want to go to that car wash, right? So yeah, they're fairly complex little operations that right in the middle of your neighborhood.
Well, it was interesting because when you and I first met, when you were in Boulder for with the social innovation mentoring programs there, and you had one location at that point, and the background being creating family creating an opportunity for a family member who's on the spectrum to be able to have a fulfilling, mission in life, purpose, right? Now you have 3 locations, and what's your total head count now across the 3 locations?
A little over 100.
So and 80% of those are
Yes.
neurodiverse, right? That's amazing when you think about the typical employment, because you're not the only one. A lot of family members think about, maybe particularly those that are lower functioning, they tend to get stuffed into jobs like, McDonald's or Burger King, quick serve restaurants, those types, right? And a lot of family members I know have reached out to you about, hey, you did the car wash. What did you learn? And do I create a business in order to give my my son, my daughter, my nephew, my niece employment opportunities, because I can't find an employer who's willing to give them a shot. So, what's been your experience there? And I know a number of families have reached out to you about this.
Yeah. So, whenever we have like a big media hit, like a video go viral or something, we get like an outpouring of families just like that. Like, hey, how can I do what you guys did? And because of that, we partnered with the University of Miami and the Taft Foundation to create a curriculum that ended up being an online course called the Autism Advantage, to kind of walk people through how do you go from, having this need to employ your loved one with autism to building a sustainable and viable business that will employ them and hopefully other people like them. And it was a really interesting experience to go through and build that, because we went like around the country. We met with lots of families. We did a lot of live workshops to try to refine the curriculum. And I think what a bunch of people have gone through it. About 20 organizations have been, about 20 families have actually built companies after going through the course or while going through the course. And that certainly has created, I think, somewhere around 150 to 200 jobs. It's hard to tell exactly, but one thing that I think was really interesting about that process is what we learned was that I think it's a lot harder to get someone who's the parent of, at this point, usually an 18 to 22-year-old. So the parent is often 50, 55 years old. Most of them are, I think, what you would consider like a reluctant entrepreneur, right? They're not becoming an entrepreneur because they had this, passion to build something. They're becoming an entrepreneur because they see it as really their only option to create jobs for their loved ones. And I think that's a much more difficult approach for us to support people on that journey than it is to help small, medium-sized business leaders say like, hey, look, you chronically struggle with finding good talent, you are trying to differentiate your brand, you're trying to build systems that scale so you can grow your business. What if, this idea of employing neurodivergent talent and designing an operation that supports them can solve a lot of your business problems, and then also employ a lot of people who are neurodiverse. The small, medium-sized business community has every possible opportunity that could be out there. So we think that that's where we're kind of targeting right now. And that's what my book, The Power of Potential, is really geared towards those leaders.
Yeah, and I want to talk, to your book's coming out. It's actually coming out today. So we've actually were able to time this recording and everything. So the day this show drops is the day your book goes is now available. The Power of Potential. Right. So walk us through the book. So you've had this kind of nirvana shift of family members who think they need to start the business versus how do we address the employment. And as we started off the conversation around the economic impact of having such a large portion of a workforce not able to participate in the workforce, and how do we change that? So talk us through that shift in what's in the book.
Yeah. So at some point in trying to build our business, we realized that the problems that we were solving weren't really autism problems. They were business problems that our team members with autism were helping us identify and helping us work through. So I think we found 4 core problems that I think most, if not all, small businesses struggle with to some degree. And the first is struggling to find and identify good talent. The second is that you're focusing too much on what makes your business unique instead of how to make it replicable. The third is that you kind of struggle with having managers that are just good enough. And the fourth is that you're firing your worst employees. And so what we found kind of going through these phases was that people with autism can help us build a much clearer and more accurate hiring process by learning to assess their talent effectively. They have helped us build clarity, really obsessively focusing on building clarity throughout every aspect of the operation. Helped us really develop wonderful managers who care about their team members, who care enough to deliver the tough conversations and give clear feedback and hold people accountable and really help people grow. And by working with the most extreme of our team members, who I think most people would be like, that's someone who you should fire, right? They're struggling so much that they're not a good fit. But instead of looking at it that way, saying, no, this is the person that we should work with to redesign these systems that they're struggling with, they're chafing up against. All of those things have really unlocked a ton of potential in our business and really created a cascading effect of helping us build psychological safety within the organization, an ethical way to hold people accountable, purpose throughout the whole business. And all that kind of culminates in an experience that customers really love and a brand that they want to support. So, and we think that this is what we've done with this and what we've shared in the book can be replicated by all sorts of organizations, even if they don't want to necessarily create a neurodivergent hiring program, but are open to thinking about how to operate their business in a different way. I think that they can really build a more inclusive business and a better business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, what you've got in the book, we had to learn through very rough, trial and error, right? And I think, but there's one challenge that we've run into, and I've traveled around the country talking to CEOs who are interested in neurodiverse hiring programs, and that is finding the candidates. I get calls from like vocational rehab in the state of Colorado, the same program in California. I've got a friend who runs a very robust manufacturing business. in California, and he has locations in other parts of the country. He's very interested. There's no like employment agency that places these candidates. How do you solve someone reads this book and goes, wow, got it. Now what?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, put yourself in the candidate's shoes, right? If you've been passed over for job after job, like the young man that you talked about, graduated second in his class at Carnegie Mellon, passed up over 60 times in interviews. Eventually, that person kind of disappears from the employment, from the normal employment channels. They're no longer like looking for jobs because it's been really challenging. So what we find is most effective is going into the community and finding the people who know and love specific individuals with autism. So those are your special education teachers, your community liaisons at the autism nonprofits, your job coaches, and building the network among those people. There becomes very quickly like an unending supply of talent. So our 3 car washes are within 5 miles of each other. So we've got a little over 80 employees with autism across the 3 stores that, in 5 miles in a small area of Broward County, Florida. And we have a wait list of candidates still. And, we staffed our second store when we opened it. We were like Broward County unemployment rate was like 3.4%. And we had over 500 people apply for jobs, for the about 45 jobs that were at that location. And, I think it's about priming the pump and building kind of accurate or a little bit more of a grassroots type of recruiting process, right? So it's like I think a little bit more like marketing than like a lot of traditional recruiting goes, where we're building a persona, like, okay, who is this person that we're trying to find, and like what do they do in their life, right? So they may be part of some neurodivergent social groups. They may be supported by these organizations in the community. They may have gone to these schools or these training programs. And then we find people at those places, and they tend to be the ones who direct us to the talent. We have very little success finding neurodivergent talent on like regular job boards. There are some groups that are starting, right? There's a wonderful group called Mentra that we really like, founded by another sibling and a couple individuals with autism that are trying to build out a platform. There is the team at Microsoft and the Neurodiversity at Work Roundtable has built a platform as well. And so this stuff's starting, but for us, we still find the most effective ways to go out into the community.
Yeah, and for us, we get them inbound because people have heard that we hire for neurodiverse. So like vocational rehab here in the state of Colorado has turned out to be an incredibly good source for us because they'll have somebody very, very skilled who would never think of applying to our organization, even though they have a software or engineering background. Because they'll read a job description and they're very literal. If they can't check 100% of everything on the list, like, oh, not for me.
Yep.
I don't qualify.
Yep.
Versus nobody ever writes a job description assuming you're going to have a candidate that's going to hit 100% of the checkboxes.
Yeah.
And so for us, like you said, though, you got to get creative on finding the community because it's not just post it to a job rec or hand it off to a recruiter, right? Because the recruiting community, and I've had lots of conversations with them, are not plugged in. They're not thinking about, this is a potential population for employment, but but I think is a hugely talented, highly overlooked pool of talent if handled correctly. So
absolutely.
So you get to check off the bucket list checkbox on writing a book.
No. It was always a goal. I didn't think I would do it when I did it, but it was like my dad just one day was like, Tom, you should write a book. Like, let's do this. You should do it now. It'll have a lot of impact. And, it took me 4 years to finally get it done, and had a wonderful collaborator in Sarah Grace, who helped me write it. Otherwise, I don't think anyone would be very interested in reading it. But yeah, it's been a cool ride, and I'm hoping people really find value in it.
Yeah, well, it's always interesting, right? I was having a conversation not too long ago with my agent, Mark Gerald, in New York, and I always give him a hard time. I'm like, man, you know something? You actually lied to me when I first started this project. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. Just sign your contract, deliver your manuscript, everything. Like, if you had told me how hard it was, I probably would have never even started, right? I think people underestimate how hard it is. Even when you've got a passion, like in your case, for your subject, or in my case, innovation being the subject, even though you have a passion, the writing a book is a heavy lift. So kudos to seeing it through and getting it all done.
For sure. It was much hard. I say I would echo the exact same thing. If I knew what it was going to be when I started, I probably wouldn't have ever started. That's true with a lot of things that we undertake, though, right? Like,
well, yeah, but
the things that matter.
Yeah, but think about when you and your dad first took over the first car wash, right? If you had known, where you are today, based on the conversations you and I had here in Boulder when we first met, where you and your family have achieved now is so much further than your dream was even at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, and there were so many things like early on, like a car wash is a very mechanical business, and couldn't like even turn a wrench or hold a pair of pliers. Like, if I had known how challenging that all would have been, may not have started.
Well, the fact is that you and your dad didn't have a background in car washes.
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. Nope. We just thought it made sense. We did the research, right? We looked at a bunch of different industries. We tried to understand what we thought Andrew could do, and some of the broader ideas of what people with autism are, quote unquote, their strengths. While, certainly as we get to know people with autism, they have every type of strength they could possibly have, very diverse group of people. But like, we were just like, okay, like, we've learned that people with autism like structured environments, are detail oriented, and we feel like Andrew could do this, and we just went for it. And honestly, really, really blessed that we did, because, it's been an incredibly rewarding experience, and we built a great business because of it.
So how's Andrew doing, by the way?
Andrew's good. Andrew's really good. I mean, he has like come so far out of his shell, and like really, he loves having a community, right? He loves having the people around at the car wash. He has friends there. I can't say he loves washing cars. It's not his favorite part of the job, but he does like having money in his pocket, so he can go and buy the things he wants to buy, and have friends that he looks forward to seeing, and feels like he belongs somewhere, which I think really has really changed his life and changed our whole family's life.
Yeah. Wow. You guys have gotten some pretty high profile press on you guys over the years. Yeah,
we've been really lucky. I mean, the people like the story, and we were on the nightly news twice. We were on the Today Show, and a lot of other press pieces. We've had a couple of videos go really viral on social media, and I think that's because people want to hear the story of that. Like, it's possible, right? Yes, there's a very high unemployment among people with autism, but it's quite in my opinion, of all like the big inextricable problems that society faces, this one's pretty solvable, because there's clearly talent, and there's clearly a need for that talent. It's just bridging those two things, because the systems that we've built aren't designed for people who think differently. And that is essentially what you're seeing with people with autism.
So as we wrap up, if I'm assuming the book is going to be available in all the normal places, Amazon and all of that, right?
Yes.
But if people want to read specifically about you and the work and maybe see some of these videos on the stories that have been told about the family, the rising tide, et cetera, where would they go to see that?
Yeah, the best place would be going to our website, which is risingtidecarwash.com. So that's got all of our media hits as well as more information about the book. There's our sister website, risingtideu.com. There's lots of training material on it as well. Those would be the place I'd recommend going.
Great. Hey, Tom, congratulations on the book. Congratulations on your success. And thanks for coming on the show.
Bill, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. So hopefully this week's episode gives you some insight and some ideas around looking at alternative hiring pools, looking at an audience or potential candidates to hire separate from what you may have been considering in the past. And I cannot underemphasize tapping into this community can really be that spark for your team's creativity and innovation. I've experienced it. I've been plugged into this community for quite some time. My daughter is a speech language pathologist. She was the inspiration for when I started Hacking Autism when I was the CTO at Hewlett Packard. We still run Hacking Autism today. She is actually the president and CEO. This is an area, a segment of the population that all hiring executives, organizations, teams, individuals should look into. And the best way to get up to speed about what does that mean and how do you best do that is to get Tom Deary's book. Get the book, The Power of Potential. So check it out. We will have links to the book, purchasings, all that in the show notes. So you want to check that out. You'll be able to find it at all the places you would normally give the books. But I'd also encourage you to go over to Tom's site at risingtidecarwash.com. Check it out. You can see the videos, all the news coverage for what they're doing. And they're just one example of the impact that we can all have. But it isn't about it's not a feel-good thing. The return you will get from tapping into this neurodiverse, people who think differently than you and I, tapping into this community can create a unique competitive advantage for you. So do not overlook it. Innovate your hiring. Innovate how you hire, innovate how you manage, innovate how you find and tap into new candidates that can inspire and take your organization to the next level. As we wrap up this week's show, just want to say thanks for taking the time out of your schedule. Greatly appreciate it. We are now into the next year, 2023. It's crazy already this early in the year. We've got a lot of great shows coming up. We're also going to be preparing for the launch of season 19, which will be in March here just pretty soon. So stay tuned for that and be part of the celebration as we looking back on having done 18 years of podcasting. And we do it because of the feedback and the encouragement that we get from you. Thank you for that. Thank you for being part of the community. Thank you for being a friend that has been supporting me in this effort for so very long. So stay tuned. We've got some exciting activities that will be around when we click over into the next year of the podcast, the next season. And so you want to be a part of that. With that, have a great week. You get out there, take those innovations, change the world with your ideas. You have a contribution to make. The world needs your ideas. Have a great week. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, This has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.
This show is distributed by the Innovators Network. For more information and other great shows and content, visit theinnovators.network.